What's happening in the canine industry? For all the latest news, views, and expert opinions, stay right here for the Canine Paradigm. You'll hear from industry leaders, experts, doyens of the industry, learned colleagues, movers and shakers, and the odd randy guest. Get the latest insights and expert advice from both here and abroad from the people in the know. Now, here are your hosts, Glenn Cook and Pat Stewart. And I'm Lofty Fulton, and I'm out of here.
Hey, I need to tell you something.
Oh, God, what is it?
Some time ago, we did an ad episode where we talked about how we were going to get better with our ads.
I was wondering where you were going.
Yeah.
We're so shit at the ads.
That's what we said. We said, we're so shit, we're going to get better, and we just didn't.
We don't. We're
just-
so full of shit. All right, well, here they are. We got 5 sponsors currently.
All right, who are they? Read
First
them
is
out.
the OG, the Einzelwiener.
Oh, that knob.
The bullfed.
Yeah.
Nah, he's the OG. He's been with us
He's
since the
good.
start.
No, he's good.
He
He's
is
good.
going to
He's a
sell
good
you
boy.
whatever you need.
Yep.
He'll get it. What you should do is contact Jason from Einswick Dog Queer with some peculiar product, tell him you want it, and make him get it in and sell
Yeah.
it to you. Even if you could buy it somewhere else, just make sure he gets it in for you.
Just make that bastard work.
But in all honesty, I'd say 90% of my shit comes from him, and it's all the best stuff.
I did see some feedback on our forum where somebody was really intrigued about your handler package, the one
Oh.
that you got from Jason. Obviously, it works. Like,
Yeah, it's
people
good.
are paying attention to
Yeah,
the
the
ads.
leashes
That's
are good.
great. Even though we're shit at this, we do a terrible job of actually trying to keep things updated. It's great to see that the people who are investing in our show are actually getting some leeway.
Yep. Mate, I've heard that your wife sells some canine products.
My wife is doing great guns at the moment. I said before that she's been supported terrifically in the United States, which has been good, but I will swing that back home and say that so many more people in Australia are doing it. And it's great to see, like, there are people finally in the sporting dog world who are starting to prioritize nutrition for their dogs. And I know them. I can see them when Narelle comes in and says, oh, guess who bought some product off me for the first time. So
Are you saying there's no patient confidentiality?
no, there's
You're
patient
aware-
confidentiality.
Oh, sorry.
It's just a
purchaser
mailing list.
confidentiality.
Well, it's a mailing list.
Are you aware my dog is taking pee, collagen, and what's the other thing he takes?
Antonol.
Antonol.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been on that.
Antonol is not Narelle's business, but I've got to do a shout out for Antonol. They are absolutely fantastic. They're very supportive of our show. Whenever we've done seminars and so forth, they have been first to dip their hand in their pocket. They are very generous with their product. But let me just say, all that aside, their generosity and their advertising and marketing, let me just say on the other side of that, their product is amazing.
Yeah.
Like, it does work. It's very beneficial.
For sure.
It's one of those things where they say Antonol for every dog every day. I totally agree with that. Narelle has even supported that. When people have asked them about her product, she says the 2 things that I would absolutely give to you is Antonol and her Gut Protect formula.
Yeah, right.
Gut Protect is like her holy grail of
Like
her
the
whole
flagship
range.
of the range.
This is not me market talking, okay? Because
This
we
is
are
an ad.
This is an ad, but this is not me doing marketing.
But we've already pointed out we're shit at ads.
I know. Of all the things that she sells, and she sells some killer product, but the one thing that she does sell, which I absolutely agree with her, every dog should have this product, is the Gut Protect.
Really?
100%. It's nothing that they need for being sick. It's something that they need to do just to maintain great gut balance.
Okay.
And gut balance is like mental health. It's one of those things that you absolutely want to get control around. So products like Antonol, great for every day. Gut Protect, great for every day. There's other products that aren't even related to hers called Rose Hip Vital and stuff like that. Absolutely fantastic for dogs to be on every sort of day. But I know there's other people we need to talk about. If you want to learn more about Narelle's products, go to our website, canineseuticals.com. I think it's
You'll figure it out.
it's .com
Canine
or
Ceuticals.
.com.au. It's one of those.
No one
but-
types that shit anyway. Everyone just Googles it and
Yeah,
then goes,
just Google it.
yeah.
You'll find it.
Hey,
Yeah.
George Kittredge, I reckon we should get him on the show.
We should have George Kittredge on the show.
Yeah.
Not only is he devilishly handsome,
Yep.
but he's got a fantastic, one-of-a-kind product that I've never seen replicated anywhere in the world. You and me were getting a car ride by him. We got to see the prototype firsthand.
And then his bike got stolen with the prototype on it.
did,
Remember that?
yes.
Yeah. But anyway, George has Rowdy Hound Dog Box. And
Yes.
so it's a crate that goes on the back of your motorbike so that your dog can go everywhere with you. And
Yeah.
it's cool as shit. It's a great idea. You should
Yeah.
totally get one. Tailored Canines in Canada.
Yeah,
Do you know that Taylor from Tailored Canines is hosting Jazz Whiting later in the year?
I do know that. Yes,
Yes.
I saw the ad. Very good.
Yep.
Not
So-
only is she doing great stuff with her tailored canine,
Her training business.
her training business, but she's also getting a fantastic trainer over there to help with her tailored training.
She is. And finally, Barbara de Groot
The sugar mama from the Heart Dog
From the
Training.
Heart Dog Training.
Just fucking throws cash at us.
Just supports the show. God bless her.
Yeah. I think later on in the year when Narelle and I are over doing a seminar with Melanie Benware, Barbara de Groot is coming over.
Wonderful.
I think she has put down a like, and I said, you better come, sugar mama, and she gave me a thumbs up. So hopefully she's going to be there and I can give her some love to repay us for all the kindness and support that she's thrown at us and ask nothing in return.
All right. That's our ad.
Yeah.
That one's good to go for at least another 4 years. You'll hear from us then. Welcome back to the Canine Paradigm. I'm your host, Pat Stewart, and I'm joined in studio today by my co-host, Glenn Cook.
Hello, sir. Hello, everyone.
How are you?
I'm good.
Like we're pretending we haven't just been talking for an
I
hour.
know, we just did. We do it all the time.
every day. Hey, I got a bee in my bonnet.
Let's go.
I want to talk about leashes.
Yeah, it's a good topic.
Yeah. Something I've been thinking on and sort of swirling around in my brain a lot lately
Yes.
is about leashes.
Yeah.
And there was a final trigger just recently that just kind of prompted me to think out a structure of things I want to talk with you about today in terms of leashes.
Well, share it with me. I want to hear all about it.
So I like coffee, and most days I get coffee from the same place. There's an awesome little cafe just up the street from my shop.
Are you one of these people who can have a coffee and then not poo directly after?
That's first coffee of the day.
Okay,
but
cool. All right,
subsequent,
second, yeah.
yeah. I'm at least a 2 a day guy.
Yeah.
Like coffee's
Really?
a mean. Yeah, 2
Yeah.
at minimum, if not 3.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can
maybe
only
more.
have 2.
Yeah,
Yeah, if I have more than 2, then I can't sleep properly at night.
yeah, right. Yeah, I have a cutoff of like 3 in the afternoon usually. Although I break that rule from time to time.
Yep. Anyway, leashes.
Yeah, carrying on. So anyway, this cafe.
Yes.
I know them pretty well. I get a lot of my meals there.
Yep.
But often when I'm walking to work in the morning, they're doing their setup. All right. Now, in this cafe, there's a dog, and people who follow me on Instagram will have seen I post stories of him sometimes. His name's Pongo, and he lives at the cafe. He's the owner's dog. He's a little, I don't know what he is. He looks like maybe a little Cocker Spaniel-ish thing.
Oh, yeah. I've
Right?
seen him. I've seen him on your stories.
Yeah, he's a cute little dog.
Yeah.
Actually, incredibly trained.
Yep. Like a street dog.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
So he's at the cafe. It's got a big outdoor area. It's in a courtyard sort of space.
Yep.
He is just off leash all the time, wandering around. I've never seen that dog harass someone that didn't want to be harassed.
Yep.
The cafe's dog friendly. I've never seen him approach another dog that wasn't inviting the approach and was going to have an appropriate interaction with. I've never seen the dog cause any issues whatsoever. He only engages with people who he's clearly welcome to engage with. He never causes any issues with any of the other dogs, and he just wanders around, does his own thing.
Were you an 80s kid or a 90s kid?
80s. I was born in 83.
When you and I were young children, that was pretty much normal life for
Yeah.
people with dogs. We grew up in an era where we weren't so constrained with overreach by councils, state government, federal governments. Nobody sort of, well, people cared, but dogs were very social and people were very rural minded with things. I grew up in the outer suburbs. I lived in the city as a very young child, but then I sort of moved to the outer suburbs as a pre-teens and teens and so forth. But life with people then was dogs wandered and dogs were very social with people
Yeah.
of all sizes. They were even social with each other. Like it wasn't uncommon to see groups of dogs playing in the street with each other or just, roaming the neighborhood and then they'd go home to be fed.
Yeah.
That was our life as children.
Yeah.
But laws and litigation.
Exactly. So Pongo hangs out in this cafe. The other thing I should add, never seen him beg for food. Like
Yeah.
never once. And there's food everywhere at this cafe.
Yep. Do
As-
people feed him or they encourage him not to be fed?
No, some people do. And
Yep.
if he's interested, if he feels like it, might take a piece of food.
Yep.
But he doesn't. The dog is incredible at just being the dog at a cafe.
Yep.
Right. Now, I've never seen it anywhere else. I don't know what its life looks like anywhere else, but I see it there and it's great.
Yep.
But as I'm walking to work most days at about 5:30 in the morning, I'm walking past their shop as they're setting up. Pongo's out there doing his own thing, and my 2 dogs are on leash as I'm walking them down the street. Now, every now and again, I will take one of my dogs or both of them or whatever to go get coffee, and they're on leash, and I might leave them outside as I walk in to order and put them in a sit or a down or something like that, but they don't move. They get put static, and I might leave them in this somewhat secluded area, depending on whether I take them or not, which is pretty uncommon. So anyway, the other day I tagged them on Instagram when I posted a thing of Pongo, and they then looked at my Instagram and found out I'm a dog trainer. Like they don't really know what I do for a job other than that it's in the dog space, right? And I don't suppose they care. But they looked me up on Instagram and saw, oh, you're a real dog trainer. You do real dog stuff. So the owner then said to me, how come your dogs are never off leash? And I was like, oh, well, and I didn't really have an answer. Right? I just kind of was stuttering for words because what I realized was this is a much bigger conversation. Like you don't actually give a fuck about my answer, right? And she goes, look, because Pongo's always around. Like I just tell him what I want from him and he does it. And I'm like, yeah, okay. And I ended up just saying, well, my dogs are a work in progress, right? Like that's, I just left it at that.
Yeah, good answer.
But then I went back and I was reflecting and I was like, wow, my dog's always on leash. And why is her dog always off leash? And I know the answer to that is because her dog is naturally good, or she put a lot of work into when he was young, teaching him how to make the appropriate choices and how to be social in public and whatever. But he's also not exactly full of drive either, right?
Yeah, exactly.
He just pots around. Nothing really kicks that dog, nothing that I've seen. And certainly maybe this was the case when he was younger and they've trained it out of him. I don't know. But nothing really excites him to the point where he needs to be restrained. He doesn't have any really strong desires.
Yep.
I don't engage with him a lot. Every now and again, he comes over and talks to me. But the people that do try and push engagement with him and that he enjoys the company of, when he sees them, he casually walks over to them. Like he doesn't go at them like a bull at a gate like high drive dogs do.
Yep.
And so why are my dogs on leash and hers not is because it's not appropriate for my dogs to be off leash and it's entirely appropriate for her dog to be off leash. And then it started me sort of thinking about why that is shocking to someone else to see this guy's a dog trainer. He clearly can train dogs. They've seen videos of me training dogs now. They know that I'm capable of training a dog to do most things that anybody would want to train a dog to do. Why have I not trained them to be able to just walk around off leash? Because I could easily do that with my dogs. If I wanted my dogs to be off leash everywhere dogs and that were a priority to me, I could easily do that. But that is not in the slightest a priority to me. But it caused me to reflect. And I was like, there was a time when that was a priority to me. Now, it was before I was a dog person. When I was a kid, we had border collies growing up. We had one called Panda because she looked like a panda bear, and she died when I was maybe 4 or 5, something like that. So that was my first dog, and all my initial memories of a dog are of that dog.
What do you remember of her?
I remember a couple of things. The first was that she knew how to play cricket.
Yep.
She understood the game to the extent that me and my friends, all we needed was a batter and a bowler, and she was the fielder. It worked perfectly because she understood you take the ball straight back to the person who threw the ball to the guy who hits it with the bat.
Yeah, nice.
So it was the best when you're a 4 or 5-year-old kid and your buddy's in the area, you can play cricket all day and nobody has to be the fielder because you only want to be the batter or the bowler.
Yeah, that's the shit job fielding.
Yeah, no one wants to be out there fielding, but the dog loved it because the dog's getting we play with a tennis ball. I don't know that she understood the game in so much as that you had to catch the ball on the full to get people out, but being a border collie, she was always trying to catch the ball on the full, so that counted as you were out.
Yep.
And she would field in that as quickly as possible. She would run the ball back to the bowler.
So
and
she satiates her border collie needs and
Totally.
you guys get to play cricket.
Totally.
Awesome.
The other thing I remember really distinctly about Panda is that she was stolen when we were young. She disappeared for a period and then we got her back. I feel like there was more to that. I should probably talk to my parents about the details of that now that I'm old enough to hear the real story.
Yeah.
I think that there was probably some interesting developments in how... No, she came back.
Okay.
And because Panda got really fat and where my parents live, it was at the time a functioning mental hospital, but like a big open flowing area one. It's now Callan Park, right, where like I've trained my dogs all the time and stuff. when it was a functioning hospital, because dogs would roam, right? Like you said, that dog would just disappear and come back and would spend the day out with other people and then just come back in the evening and be with her family who had got home from school and whatever.
Yep.
And she was always fat and we could never figure out why. And it turns out because she had like 6 different people feeding her.
Yeah,
right?
nice.
And we found that out when she went missing and we were looking for her and they were like, oh, we know her. Yeah, she hasn't been around, right? And so we're like, oh, how well do you know? Like we feed her every day. We're like, now we understand, first of all, why she disappears and why she's fat.
That's my excuse too, you know.
Yeah, too many people feed you.
Yeah, too many.
Too many people enjoy your company and give you food in order to bring you around.
That's right.
Yeah, and then we had another border collie called Sasha, and Sasha was pretty similar. Just another dog that, you know, I'm sure that there was a terrible period with a rambunctious puppy that I don't know anything about because I was a little kid, and I'm sure my parents and my older brothers and sisters dealt with all that. But all I have is these amazing memories of this dog. Sasha lived to be, I think, 15 or something like that. It was my dog. She was mine right up until I like left to join the army. And actually it was one of the things I remember telling my mom because she was kind of at the back end of life. I remember when I went to basic training, I was like, if Sasha dies while I'm gone, don't tell me. Like, I don't think that in the layered stress model would help. But then she died about a year after I joined the army. Anyway, but those dogs were mostly off-leash dogs.
Yep.
They weren't really on leash very much at all because we lived opposite the park where they would go. And so they often were on the front step, not in the yard. They were just sort of dogs that were around and they made good choices. And so the street, it's just one street across the road. It's not a traffic street, it's a local street. So the dogs could basically cross the road safely. They would check for cars and walk across and spend their day where they wanted to and come back. There wasn't a lot of cause to restrain them ever. And so for me, when I then got my own dog, me and Jane got a dog together. His name was Ernie. I think Sasha had either just died or was like right at the doing it. Like, but she obviously stayed with my parents and me and Jane lived together. And Ernie was a 7-year-old like mongrel border collie thing. And I remember one of my first goals was like, I need to be able to take this dog off leash to the park. Like I need to be able to walk to the place that I'm going off leash. And it was mostly back streets to get there. And like I did it, but I don't know why I had that as a goal. Because to me, that was just normal. Dogs are off leash. And I remember being proud of myself that I made it to the park and only had to tell Ernie to get back to me 500 times. Like it was, you know what I mean?
I do.
Like that normal pet dog people, I'm like, yeah, I would have told you 100%, my dog's good to go. Like totally reliable off leash.
Yep.
And every step I'll be like, get back, hey, come back here, hey. Like, and of course.
You sound like you got Tourette's.
Like people, and of course he'd walk back from the park way better than he would walk to the park.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, look, my training's getting better. Like all the dumb shit that people who don't know what we know, I was one of them and said all those things. But for sure, having the dog off leash was a priority for me. That was a thing before I was a dog person, and it was an image thing for sure. Like it wasn't that holding a leash is hard. And I think as well, if I really sort of think on it, I think part of it was that all those dogs, as soon as you put a leash on them, would pull like a freight train.
Yeah.
And so it was easier just to be like, well, I won't put a leash on. And knowing what I know now, those are conditioned responses. It's that the dog pulled into the leash, got to where it wanted to go, the pressure turned off. Now, whenever the leash gets pulled on, the dog just goes, okay, well, I pull into this thing and it takes me places that must be awesome. Like, I understand all of that now. That's really basic and every dog trainer gets that. But before I was a dog person, when I was just looking at, well, the dog pulls on the leash, I don't like that. Probably if I don't use the leash, I won't have that problem. And that's true. You don't have the problem of the dog pulling into the leash. You have a massive smorgasbord of new problems and you're accepting a whole new level of risk and liability, but the dog doesn't pull and you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
You know? So like many pet dog owners, that was a big goal for me. And I was able, when the owner of the cafe kind of looked at me like, what are you, a fuck up? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
Are you not good at your job?
Yeah.
Why is your dog's on leash all the time? And it occurred to me, I presently have the 2 most highly trained dogs I think I've ever had, right? Valerie is 10 and basically can read my mind. Like I really don't have to tell her to do much. She has been so indoctrinated in the process of my life that she just does the things.
She's what made me pay attention to you in the early days.
Yeah.
To be honest, like when I first met you, I just thought, oh, you're just another dude.
Another army guy.
Another army guy that says things. But when you brought Valerie around and I watched a trainer, I thought, holy shit, I've never seen anyone manage a Springer that well. Usually when I see people manage Springers, it's like they're just crazy and they just piss off and run off and same thing. It takes them forever to try and get the dog back. But she was like walking between your legs. She was shifting positions well, heeling beautifully, focused heels, coming back when called, going to markers. Like she was doing all the stuff. And I thought, you've put some work into this little dog.
Yeah, and I did.
Yep.
That's why she's so easy now was the first 18 months of her life. The first 18 months of her life were insanity. And not insanity, but I was at the peak
guided.
Of and we were filming everything.
But what's wrong with
did.
that? That's how it should be.
No, exactly.
Like if you look at the timeline of a dog between the time you get it, let's say you get dogs from puppies. I know this conversation's happened many, many times in my head a lot as well. It's what I say to people when they come to me for dog training problems. I said, the issue is we get puppies from 8 weeks, give or take a couple of weeks here or there. By the time we get dogs trained, they're at an age where they're old. They're 7, 8, 9 years of age. They're given up on pulling and so forth because they're just thinking, I just don't have the energy for it anymore.
Yeah.
And you've had to go through all that time. You just said, like her life was very hectic in that first 18 months. If only, if only everybody did that forevermore, that's a life-saving technique right there.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about animals getting pissed off to welfare, to rescue, to being euthanized and so forth, if only other people did what you did, if only people structured their dog's life in that first 18 months, the rest of the time is cake.
Yeah.
It's fucking cake. I mean, it's a bit of chili at the start, but the rest of the time it's cake.
Yeah, exactly. I learned that before I was even in dogs when I was working on a building site and there was a guy that had his like back of the car dog.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing. Like I
think we've talked about our building mates' dogs. Like I had one called Arseholes that dug at your ass. And
well, like when I was an apprentice, because I worked on building sites for a year before I joined the army. This is in 2001.
Yeah.
So it's not like this is a long time ago. It is a long time ago, but it's not like this is
23 years ago, man.
Yeah. But back then, like if you try to take some of someone's ute and their dog would bite you, you're an idiot for getting bitten by their dog. There was no like, no
litigious issue.
No,
it was
not
like,
an issue.
You're a dickhead. You went to somebody else's car. You touched their shit without permission. The dog bit you. Fuck you.
Yeah, you're an idiot. You got bitten by that dog.
Yep.
But so this one guy, I remember talking to him and he had his dog on the site. And I remember asking him like, how did you train this dog? And I remember him saying, you just got to be really strict for the first 18 months. That's it. And then everything else just falls into place. Anyway, Valerie has been that. Like, she's a borderline wild animal. I think that if I actually tried to give her straight commands, she would look at me like, hey, I don't get told what to do. But she just knows what to do is appropriate at the right time, right? So she knows when I put her on the leash. She walks on my left, Remy walks on my right. They both just walk along beside me. Anyway, I digress. Having my dogs off leash is just not a goal that I have for walking around. Now, Valerie could easily do it. And as I was saying, the two dogs I have now, Valerie and Remy, that are my dogs, have at one point in their life been extremely highly trained dogs. Remy still is, like we only just got a PSA 2 a month ago. Like we are still in a very high level of control. And he will do basically what I tell him to do. Every now and again, he might be like, hey, I'm very interested in something else, but I have the compulsive ability at that point. Like I've layered the pressure to be like, no, you're doing it. And he happily does it.
Yep.
So if I wanted to, I could easily walk from my house to wherever I want and Remy would do it in a focus heel. You know what I mean? Like it's totally possible, but it's just not something I'm interested in. But then
There's too much scope for things to go wrong in those sort of scenarios
Totally.
as well. For putting all that prep work in and then having an end goal for it, only let your ego get carried away with you and say, oh, now I've got to walk the dog down Leichhardt into a cafe just so the lady at the shop thinks everything's okay.
Yeah, so that I look cool and people believe that I'm good at doing what I do.
Great, and it's great if it goes great. But you only have to have the dog run onto the road. You only have to have another dog come out. And then the level of control that you've got in those sort of situations, and it might not be your dog's fault. It might be the other dog's fault. But the problem is it's now giving your dog something else to think about that you didn't want your dog to think about.
Yeah, exactly.
That's my thoughts around it anyway. Like I've had on-lead discussions with people over a myriad of years. And I remember sort of recanting in my head a technique that I did with Harley when he was a young dog, thinking about some of the stories that you've talked about from our youths, mine and yours, and then the variance in dogs growing up. I got Harley in 1989. So in 1989, that's when my mate Mark and I co-bought Harley together. He had to move out of the house, so I paid him for the rest of the money and I took possession of the dog. That's a whole lifetime ago for some people. I remember as he started growing up, my uncle at the time, he said to me, mate, you can't have a dog like this, because we all thought he was a pure Rottie. He was a Rottie Shepherd cross. But he said, you can't have a dog like this and not be involved in active training. It was the best words I ever got. For all the things that my uncle didn't do in life, he did that really well. He gave me some great guidance, and he gave me some books that he had, and I read the books cover to cover like 3 or 4 times. And I used to walk down to the park that was behind us. And mate, I remember one day I went to go down there and he pulled me like a fucking steam train the whole way down there. And I was so angry by the time I got there. Mind you, I was only just getting into my training career at this stage. I'd been to other places and I knew a little bit about training, just enough to be dangerous. But I got down to the park and I thought to myself, there is no fucking way I'm going to let you get off lead now that you pulled me all the way down here. Because I used to let him go down there and we used to walk and I let him get to the park. But it became such a negative reinforced behavior that he got better and better at pulling, and I just wasn't paying attention to it. To this day where he just thought, no, I'm impatient, I'm going, and you're going to let me go as soon as we get there. We got there, like literally because he pulled me tumbling down the road, and then I thought, no, and I fucking marched him all the way back to the house. I put him in the back garden and I just ignored him, no food. So I kind of like layer punished him for everything. I got him out the next day. He was pulling, but he wasn't pulling as bad. But I just thought, no, I just turned around. We got 3/4 of the way. I just turned around, did the same thing. I put him in the back garden, just ignored him, no food. I gave him food later on, of course.
Yeah, but not in a way that he would pair to the...
Right.
Yeah.
It had to be stacked because even though I was learning about the terms of negative punishment, it wasn't really conclusive in my head that I was doing the right thing. But I just thought to myself, fuck you. I'm not going to let you do this. That was embarrassing. It was insulting to our relationship. It's not going to happen. So I marched him back home, put him in the backyard. This went on for a full week of us struggling with this position. And he was wearing correction chain at the time, but he just thought, fuck it, I'm pulling through it. So the correction chain turned into a choke collar because he was just literally one of those dogs that gagged and huffed and puffed. Mate, we got to the stage where he understood it. He kind of thought, I'm losing here. So let's say 2.5 weeks into this, because I was vigilant back then. Like if I stuck in my mind about something, there was no way I was going to come back on it. So 2.5 weeks, we got down there and he walked beautifully. Wasn't healing. We were just social walking down there, but he walked loose leash the entire distance from the house to the park. So then what I did, I thought, I wonder what happens when I make the noise of the G-snap when I click it. So I clicked it, but I left it on and he went to dash. Yeah. So I dragged him back home. And after a period of time, I could sit there. For me, I was just very bloody minded about things. I just thought, you cannot beat me at this game. Yeah. I have to win this for both our sakes. Reflecting back on this story, I didn't know 1/20th of what I know now. Yeah. But I did everything right. Remarkably, I did everything right. Because I was sitting there and I'd go, snap, and he'd try and bolt, and then he'd start looking at me. And again, this was a week later of him not getting off in the park. I remember my wife at the time said to me, because I'd tell her the story when I went home because I was fuming mad, and she'd go, oh, it's so cruel. You should just let him go. And I said, but then he wins. Yeah. Then he gets everything and it's all for naught. And she said, yeah, but you've walked all the way down there. And I said, so? There's got to be a lesson in this. So after a period of time, like I'd walk him down, beautiful loose leash walk. I'd sit down there and I'd sit on the seat and I'd just go plink, 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 plink with the G-snap. By the end of it, I was taking his leash off and putting it back on without him even knowing that it was on and off. Yeah. So we'd gone through creating a habit that I didn't realize that I had let seep into my methodology, into creating a much better form of behavior, that every single time we walked to the park, he knew the requirements of getting there and getting to an off-leash status, if at all, was he had to walk down beautifully on leash, had to be a beautiful loose leash walk all the way down. This was an informal walk, of course. I didn't make him do focused heel or anything like that. He'd do periods of healing, but mostly informal loose leash walking. We get to the park, sit on the chair. I'd snap the leash for a period of time. I'd take the leash on and off him, and then I'd give him permission to do it. Now, when I let him run, I'd always make sure, A, there was nobody else in the park that he could interact with. He wasn't a dog-aggressive dog at all. He was very social with people. Harley is still, to this day, is still one of the most brutal and active working dogs that I've ever worked with and ever had the privilege of living with. But the most gentle, beautiful soul of a dog that would play with anybody in his path. Like for him, meeting people in the park or meeting people in the street or meeting people in my home was the best thing in life for him. That wasn't a job he was told to do. It was like you soldiering. Like if you're told you're on a mission, you need to go out, there's bad guys, you need to do this, you go, okay, that's the job. You know, we need to do the job for the sake of world peace or peace in this area or to stop a barbarian from raping and murdering and pillaging and whatever. Harley was a smart dog, incredible through training, but he knew that that was his life. But his default position was one of the kindest dogs you've ever met in your life.
Yeah.
Incredible dog. It sounds like I'm immortalizing him from something that happened a very long time ago where there doesn't exist a lot of media about it, but there were a lot of people who saw it.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm talking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who all saw it. People from America, people from Germany, people from Holland, local people in Australia, probably thousands of people who saw it. So I have collective evidence of people who knew him and saw him and witnessed him being that type of dog. But switch him on, he was a fucking brutal machine. But such a lovely, lovely dog to share a life with. And this event that we went through, like it was such a struggle at the start, but I was determined I was not going to be fucking dragged down the street on my belly by this big, powerful fucking beast of a dog and then put on my ass every time I was going to do it. He learned in no time at all. There is no advantage for me to get to this park and act like a and then have no relief from it. I would say within a month, we have it perfectly rounded off. We'd go down the park. I'd let him run his fucking legs off. I'd kick a ball around for him. We'd play balls. We'd play biting on tugs. We'd do all that sort of stuff. I asked him to come back. He'd come back. I'd pop him on the leash and walk home beautifully. So within the framework of all that struggle, and mate, to be honest, there were times where I was highly emotional about it to the point where I'd nearly go home and burst into tears because I was so upset that I was being the asshole restricting my dog from going to the park. I really felt like I'd done an incredible injustice to my dog, but I hadn't.
When you reflect on that,
Yeah.
being that that's over 30 years ago and you were not a trainer, you were just a person that had a dog.
Yeah, I was just a guy with a dog.
Does it make you laugh like that you spent a month doing it when like you got their goal, but like now you do that on the walk. Like you'd be able to do it on the way there. Yeah, like if a dog pulled you now, you pause, you hold, you bring him back into position, you wait till they reset it, then you keep going forward. Like, you know, most dog trainers, a lot of our business is just to teaching loose leash walking to the people whose dog drag them down the street. And most of the time, yeah, we can get a dog not pulling in 15 minutes, you know, like, and then you can walk around to an extent with the dog understanding, oh, there's no success in pulling. Does it make you sort of laugh to think like how effective you would be at that now versus then?
I recall a comment that you said many, many years ago into our podcast history together where you said, I wish I could have the time with my dogs again and apologize for the injustices that they had to go through. And there's so many things that I wish I could say to Harley. He was the template for which I built my career on. And again, I had great tutelage, I had great mentorship, but I didn't have a lot of framework. You know, like now when people are sitting at home, when you're not at club and your mentor's not there, you can get online and you can research shit to the hilt. That wasn't around. So basically for me, it was a week-to-week thing. Like you had to kind of wait till a Thursday or a Sunday to ask these questions and be left with the resolution in your own time. So it's no wonder that things took such a long time because you kind of had to work it out yourself. You had to become handy and crafty in what you were doing. Now, people just fucking hand you the information.
Yeah.
You've got a glut of fucking fantastic mentorships and programs and online courses you can do with people. Spoiled for fucking choice out
All
there.
the information's there. The only difficulty is filtering it.
Yes,
right?
that is the issue. It's like a dragnet of information. And what I mean by that is there's tons of good information out there as well, but there's so much more poor information. Like you have to swim through sewage to get out into the nice water sometimes. And you just think, how do I know? And the only way you know is when you know.
Yeah.
I know that sounds like a bit of an oxymoron of an answer, but the only way you know is from experience.
Yeah,
like you only know that something's good when you know what bad is.
Yeah, for sure. Everything's relative.
Everything's relative. Leashes.
Back to it. So I have this conversation with this lady in the cafe. I go back to my work and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about leashes, right? And I start thinking about my own training style since I became a dog person, all right, since I was a dog trainer. Or like not a dog trainer. I've only been a like professional dog trainer for just coming up on 9 years now because that's when I left the army. But like I've been in dogs and doing dog stuff for a while, like a decent amount of time prior to that. But this is just like as a profession. I was like, okay, I'm a professional dog man. What do I think about leashes? And then I sort of started reminiscing on I've been through some iterations of how much I use leashes. So when I first started getting into dog training, I was very leash heavy.
Yep.
Because I had dogs that I had to control and I had to keep a hold of, and I was trying to bring them back in. And so it became a bit of a habit. And then I definitely have been through phases where I've not used a leash anywhere near as much as I wish that or on reflection that I should have, or that I would do now. So, especially once when I got into shaping, and when I really got into shaping, and when I really started understanding electrics and how to use them in order to communicate with the dog and stuff like that, rather than just straight aversion, I definitely spent a lot of time with no leashes on the dogs. And one of the things I think is always super interesting, we see it in a BH, we see it in the PSA level 1, where there's a heeling on leash and there's a heeling off leash.
Yep.
And what we almost always see at those things is that the heeling off leash is better than the heeling on leash.
Yeah.
And I think that is a real insight into the conflict that people create with their dog via the leash.
Yep.
And so it sort of had me thinking about my own training styles and how I've been through these different iterations of training, depending on who I'm working with, what I'm interested in. And the reason I do this for a job is I genuinely love it. I put up an Instagram post the other day about how we constantly joke in training groups and at club and stuff like that. One of the beauties of having the club is that we get to develop dogs end to end, and we're nurturing the trainers. We get to do all the bite work sessions I get to either do or be at. I'm pretty tapped into what everybody's doing with their dog. So I get to see how things play out.
You get to find out, does this work?
Yeah.
That's the conclusion that you can come to when you're doing that end-to-end training. And the great thing about it, if you see something that's not working quite well, you get to modify it along the way.
Yeah.
It's kind of like writing a book and then you realize this story doesn't actually play out with the conclusion. So what I need to do is change one of the chapters so it makes much more sense along the way in the next book I read.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know that there are that many dog trainers that get to see the start to finish. Like there's lots of people that teach puppy school, right?
Yeah.
But they don't deal with adult dogs. That's quite a common thing. There's lots of people who just say, oh, no, I just do puppies. Once they're an adolescent dog, they're out of my funnel. I only want to run puppy schools. That's fine.
Yep.
Except some of those people are fucking installing booby traps into those puppies and they don't realize that because they don't see what does this puppy turn into.
They just have a template that they work across and they just say, this is how you train a puppy.
Yeah. And so they might be running like what feels like a good puppy school, but then there's certain people in particular I can think of who do a lot of like food trading stuff. And I'm like, that's totally unnecessary. Don't do that with a puppy. Don't fuck with their food, right? Because you're creating the potential of food aggression when you could just have no feelings about food and people fucking around with it, right? So like I see people doing that and I'm like, yeah, but you don't, when people call and say, I've got a problem with my now adult dog, you refer them to a different trainer. You don't get to sort of remember what that dog was like as a puppy and think, you don't get the opportunity to reflect and go, oh shit, maybe I caused this, right? And then course correct on other dogs that are similar and you don't do the same exercise. The same I think happens when we do in-home behavior mod stuff or when we're just dealing with a pet dog owner and we do a 3-week board and train, something like that, right? Like we just see this dog for a snapshot and it's rare that we ever get to be really involved in the training. Beyond our own dogs, it's rare that most dog trainers get to be involved in the end-to-end, right? Like the start to finish of this dog and sort of see it through the majority of its life. And I think that's one of the beauties of having a club environment is that you get to draw an aggregate beyond like my own dogs. Of course, we see the end to end with our own dogs, but I get to see that with lots of dogs. And you don't get that with even police and military stuff because what happens when I'm not there, I have no idea. You know what I mean? And you can give all the best advice, but then they've got to work within their own policies and those dogs live in a kennel. And
they're brought in as adults.
Yeah.
And other people have had interactions
with
them. There's so many lot of foundational grounding that's been done already.
So many variables.
Yep.
So one of the things that I've sort of noticed with my own training, and I have definitely given advice that's led people astray, and some of that was through not enough use of leashes. So when I really reflected on my own training, especially over the last few years, I am so much more leash heavy now than I've ever been in the past. I use leashes so much more than I ever have. And it's so rare for me to ever leave anything to chance in a session where, like, let's see how the dog goes. Most of the time, depending on what we're doing, there's at least one, sometimes up to 4 leashes on the dog, to the point where recently, you know, I was doing a session with a dog that on his recall from the guard, so if we were to out the dog and call him straight back to the handler off of a decoy, he had tendencies to get up to mischief on the way back. Now, like, there's degrees of that. He might spin on the way back just to take one last look at the decoy, or if there were other decoys on the way, he would feel a lot of draw to those decoys. And so the fix is just leashes. Like, everybody in the room has a leash on the dog. Some of them were flexi leashes, which is going to freak people out. But you imagine like a square, there's 4 points on the square. One of them is the handler, diagonally opposite is the decoy, and then the other 2 points are both decoys. And if all of them have a leash to the dog and the dog gets sent to go out to the decoy and decides to take a detour, he can't, because we can just tighten those leashes. And the beauty of using flexis is they just run in and out. And if the dog goes the wrong way, all I have to do is push the button, right? Then the dog on his way back, if he decides to spin, we can stop him spinning. And if he decides to detour and go via one of the decoys on the side, the opposing one can stop that because he can lock his leash. And now the only success he can have is going back to the handler. Everybody else restricts the dog from moving. The reason why I'm so obsessed with leashes, I think, at the moment, is because I put so much weight now into making sure that I'm explaining things correctly to the dog.
As long as you have an effective fading strategy.
Yeah, of course. But we want to get to the point where the dog then is no longer making mistakes.
Yeah.
We're not using these leashes.
Yeah.
And
I get it, because it technically falls under the framing category, where a lot of times in the early days when we were teaching fronts, we'd have 2 old door panels that were fixed in the ground. So the dog couldn't move left or right. He had to come into the funnel and sit directly in front of you. Like, I'm a fan of using early framing work to teach the dog the fundamentals of it. But as I said before, as long as you have an effective fading strategy, because eventually the tools have to go away.
Yeah.
But it doesn't hurt for the dog to revisit these strategies on a reoccurring basis as well. So even if we do have a fading strategy, we can bring the dog back. Like, if we can start to see any variance in the work that we're doing, we can say to the dog, okay, well, now I need to bring the framing back in just to remind you what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I'm a fan of it. I mean, again, reflecting back on early training models, we had long leads on dogs regularly. Dogs were on leads a lot of the time when we were tying dogs into work, so we could teach a dog where to be in the guard, or hold and bark as we were calling it back then. You know, we could put the lead between our legs or whatever it was, just to show the dog, this is how close I want you to be. I remember in the early ADT days, we went through this stage where we were obsessed with making dogs come, like, literally, when I refer to Dave Schmicky's dog, Starga, his dog's jaw would be bouncing on your nutsack while you're doing a hold and bark. Sorry, people who get offended by that, but that's the reality of it. It was as scary as hell when you were doing it for the first time, because this dog was right on your groin. Then we all got fixated on changing it, that the dogs had to be like a meter away from you so the dog couldn't be stabbed or hit with anything, because we were doing patrol dogs back then. So we kind of thought, this is stupid, because if you've got a shiv, you could literally gut the dog while it's standing in front of you. Yeah, I know the dog could bite you too, but the likelihood is if you've got a weapon and it's concealed and the dog's on you, you've just stabbed the dog.
I've demoed that to a guy one time. His dog, he did have a nice dog, but there were some holes in his training.
Yeah.
And I was showing him, dog's not going to bite passive. Like, the dog was off tap. And I was like, I'm sure that dog's going to bite someone, but it ain't going to be me, because I'm not going to run away from it. And all your decoy work has been agitating it. So the dog came in and, like, nipped me. And then when I didn't react, it just went like, oh, I don't know what's happening here, and went into a bark and hold.
Yeah.
And really slowly, I just leaned down, like enough sub-threshold, just leaned down and grabbed the dog by the collar. And then I could move, but I've got you. Like, I've got control of the dog, and he could not bite me. I had him by the collar, and I, like, handed him back to the handler. I was like, this is a really nice dog, man, but we've got some work we have to do here, because your decoy needs too much chicky chicky chaka to bite.
Chicky chicky chaka.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that one for ages.
Yeah, there you go. I think my big thing on leashes at the moment is that I have a sense, and certainly maybe I was one of these people, but maybe not to the extent that I'm seeing people doing it at the moment, is I think we too often, balance trainers anyway, rely on being able to use, like, pressure to tell the dog that they're wrong. Now, maybe that's your electrics or whatever, when you can just have them not get it wrong. And one of the beauty of the leash is you can let the dog try as hard as it wants to get the thing wrong. Take, for example, here's one example, and it's a bite work one, but there's plenty of different ones I can give if we want to talk pet dog training all the way through to other things. If you're doing directionals and you've got two people to bite and you're bringing those directionals fairly close together, you can point to one and have an active decoy who is trying to draw the bite, and you have a passive one, and you're telling the dog, like, I know that one looks more enticing, but this other one is the one that I want you to bite. Of course, at some point, most dogs are going to want to go to the one that's more enticing.
Yep.
And what I see is people doing stuff like that and then stimming the dog or punishing the dog in some way or causing an aversion. And of course, then, yes, the training results in the dog understanding, okay, well, I went to the one that looked good to me, not the one that I got told to go to, and there was an aversive experience. In future, we'll go to the one that I'm told to go to. Like, that training will work, but you're giving that dog an aversive experience it doesn't need to have. And there's risks every time you do that. Now, I'm a balanced trainer. God damn, we've made it clear that I'm not afraid to use compulsion or aversion, punishment, negative reinforcement. All those things, we're very happy to use them when they're the thing to use.
You just got to be mindful of what were you thinking about when you got punished.
Yeah.
And that's the issue, is not what you as the handler were thinking about, because this is all templated in your mind. Like, you know the structure, you know how it should have played out. But what was the dog thinking about?
And that's the risk.
That's the risk.
Whereas if I had a leash on that dog and I have someone running a back line for me so that
you can say it's not possible.
And I can send the dog. And in fact, when I teach directionals, I will make sure that this situation happens. I will fucking make sure that when we hit this point in the level of training, I will make sure that the dog will make it the wrong choice, and I will let the dog find out that it is impossible to not do what I tell you to do. Not because I'm beating on you and telling you this is how it's going to fucking go, or because when you make bad decisions, it's dangerous and that you can get lit up with the e-collar. What I'm going to do is make sure that the dog sees a situation where he goes, I know you said go to that one on the right, but this one on the left looks much more exciting to me, and that's the one I want to buy. And I'll let him make that decision and find out he can't do it. And so without a leash, I'm stuck with the point where I need to, the reason he doesn't do it is because I cause an aversion to doing it. But with the leash, I can just let him not get to that decoy. And then I can explain to the dog, and like the whole framing of how the dog will think of its learning moment becomes different.
Yep.
In that the dog doesn't think I need to do it, I'm told, because or else. The dog's perception of what it learned in that moment is, you know something I don't, right? And so the dog then goes, well, I wanted this one. It seemed to me like it was available, but I can't get to it. I'm restrained via this leash. And eventually, within a few moments, and you might use the prong to help the dog understand, like you might nepo him a little bit away from that decoy towards the other one. Eventually, you give him the help and the guidance to make the right choice. And then the tension comes out of the leash from whoever's holding the back line for you, or if it's a back tie or whatever, and you let him blast the other decoy and be successful. So the learning outcome is that the dog then, instead of thinking, well, I better do what I'm told or else.
He just gives up on making the wrong choice.
Yeah, and his framing, his state of mind is that the handler knows something I don't. And he's not guiding me to what he wants me to do. The dog should then think of it in terms of he knows how I'm going to be successful. He is giving me the guidance to get to what I want. And he'll stay in that more clear sense of arousal. Now, like I'm saying, I'm not saying that you can't punish a dog for biting the wrong day. I'm not saying all those things, but what I'm saying is you maybe don't need to, especially in the learning phase. Now, eventually, as you said, the leash has to come off, right? Like your dog's not finished until the leash is off.
Yep.
But like we have dogs that we train, you know, being in the area that we're in, all we use is leash and collar on those dogs, right? And prior to going into competition, I want to know that it's going to work without the leash. And of course, there's the element of dragging the leash. Like that's a thing that has to, you know, play into your training that has a feel to the dog, right? Like a dog can tell when it's got a long line dragging behind it. And if you're going to do call-offs, then yes, for many reps, you need that long line on in order to make sure the dog can't be successful in doing the thing that you told him not to do. But before we can call the dog trained and put our hand on our heart and say, yeah, that call-off's going to work, we need to fade out that equipment.
Yep.
And at that point, then I'll go, okay, no worries. If the dog doesn't call off, I feel like he knows it. It's been 10 reps since we've had to use the leash. The leash hasn't been like it's been on, we've been ready to use it, but we've had no cause to for 10 reps. Let's now see how we go absent the leash. But we're not going no equipment. We're going to go the equipment that we can now use to punish the dog if he doesn't call off, because we have to give him that opportunity to do it. But that's not where I want to start. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to set the dog up right from the jump to be in a position where he's still learning and to learn via that kind of experience rather than just not letting him be incorrect and helping him be correct. And so that's the biggest bugbear I have about leashes in the training space, especially amongst balance trainers, because balance trainers, I feel like very often take some risks knowing that we can fix if that problem happens. Now, there's plenty of other issues that come with other training methods, like for sure, I remain a balance trainer, right? But I feel like a big part of my bugbear about a lot of the training that I see is that people are allowing their dogs to get things wrong, knowing
I can clean this up later.
Yeah, I can tell him that don't to do that if he does it. Whereas for sure that works, and there's a time and place. Like you do have to do that. You do have to give the dog the opportunity to get it wrong so you can say, hey, I know we've been doing it in a particular way. You made a choice. This is the outcome of that choice. But I definitely don't want that to be anywhere near my learning phase. I want that to be in my proofing phase.
Yeah, I agree. When you're talking about timelines in the early stages, if you create that pathway, it's still a pathway. Regardless if you think you've rounded it out and you've got rid of it, it's still there. Like it exists. It's a thought. It's in the dog's head now. I call that the maybe concept, that you're thinking, well, maybe today is my day. Maybe this is the time that I can get away with this today. Like I'm in a different place. There's a different person there. So maybe this will work. And if the dog tries it and is successful with it, it goes, well, my maybe paid off. Like we've learned in dopamine paths and so forth, like the concepts of maybe make your dopamine fucking soar through the roof. It's the highest form of reinforcement sometimes when you're in that gray zone of thinking, well, maybe I'm going to get away with this sneaky little fucking behavior today. Listening to you talking about this too, I know you know this, but I'm talking to the public now when we're talking about podcasting. Like this has a significant carryover effect, not just for sporting and working dogs, but for dogs that have significant issues as well. There's so many dogs. For some reason, over the last month, we just had a glut of people coming to us with significant problems where council had intervened and I have to write reports for them and speak to council on their behalf and consider whether the dog gets a dangerous, menacing or nuisance order on them or if they can get clear of it altogether. Some people are coming to me because they want it removed, and there's a whole range of things. The vast majority of the people that I'm speaking to in these situations, they are letting the dogs off leash. We're having a conversation about what's going on. And when we get into the meat of the conversation, they reveal to me that they're letting their dogs off leash. Like they're either walking their dogs in a situation that is far beyond their capability to control it, or the dog is off leash entirely. So once we get down to that point in the conversation, because as I say to them when we're talking, I'm an agent of yours. I'm here to help you. I'm not here to hurt you. So if you don't reveal something to me now and I end up going to court as a subject matter expert for you, I'm telling you, the prosecutor will reveal to me what you've done wrong. Like if you don't tell me, I'm stuck and I can't defend you. I've got a surprise over me. And I said, I've had this happen on 2 occasions where I've gone to court before, where my client didn't tell me the entire truth, like they didn't tell me exactly what happened. And then the prosecutor showed me photos and showed me evidence of wrongdoings on multiple other occasions, and I'm fucked. There's nothing,
Can't help you at that
I'm not
stage.
your lawyer, I'm your representation, and I'm going up there on my good word and saying, now I've seen this dog and I know the capability of it. And then they're going, yeah, but do you know about all this pre-existing history? Now, they're all the little maybes that people have created where the dog has gone, well, I did it before, I can do it again. And that's why the dog does do it again. That's why the dog is a repeat offender. However, when we do get into a situation where we start teaching dogs in the learning teaching phase that you can't do these things, and if you have an out-of-body experience where you're out of your head with the occupation of some other stimuli, bird, bee, other dog, whatever it may be, dogs have an incredibly hard time dealing with these and then suddenly being reinforced by this when they can actually get to it. Whereas if you just teach it, you're on a lead, mate. There's no way that's going to happen. You can look as much as you want, but I'm dragging you out of that situation. So after a period of time, the dog starts realizing, well, that maybe just doesn't exist for me. It never paid off. I can't actually get to it. You do need professional help. That's where you need to step in with somebody who has the guidance and measures in place to say to you, okay, you need to be doing this and this needs to play out this way. And that's why for such a long time as a trainer, I wasn't an advocate for people going down to off-leash dog parks or dog parks in general, where we create these maybe scenes for people. I know, you and I have had conversations about this before where you've said, yeah, but that's the goal for some of these people to get there. But goal or not, some of these dogs are not entitled to go down to these parks. And
for sure.
And they just shouldn't do it.
For sure.
To quote an old phrase, you wouldn't put a fox in charge of the hen house just because it's got experience with chickens.
Yeah.
And some of these dogs just should not be in these situations. And I mean, I'm the one who has to break the bad news to people. So now when we are doing a follow-up and council are satisfied that I've had a look at the dog, then I've got to say to people, now you've got to go to a trainer for a long period of time and you cannot take your dog off leash. This is it. The next part that happens here is either A, you go to the highest tier, or they seek the destruction order for your dog.
Yeah.
And they say to me, oh, but this is a sucky life for my dog. And I said, it's not. You've just got it in your head. This is a fairy tale that somebody has put in place. Your dog is going to have a great life for the rest of its life. It's going to have a better life now because now it's got measures in place. It's got control mechanisms set by you. And I said,
rules and boundaries.
Rules and boundaries. Whether we like it or not, some of us really reject some rules and boundaries that are given to us. And I said, now, some of them, granted, are unfair and unjust. But if you've got a fair and just person that is basically saying, I care about you, I want the best for you, like you have with your children as you've been raising them. All I want for you now is to learn how not to get yourself in trouble, how not to get yourself hurt, how not to get yourself killed. That's the rules and boundaries that I'm putting in place for you. Inside of these rules and boundaries, this is Disneyland. Like every day will be a fucking great day as long as you play within the rules or boundaries. If you're a smart enough person, handler or trainer, and you can convince your dog that this is your dog's idea, like we've talked about with the illusion of control, my concept of it, that's a hill that I'm going to die on. But if you can convince your dog that this is now the dog's idea, where are you going wrong with any of this? You haven't. All you've done is created a network of an incredible lifestyle together.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've been asking people all along the way, because I had a client come in the other day, at one of these people that had a council order against them. And I said, what's most important to you and what do you want at the end of the day with this dog? What do you want to do? So they started rattling off this occupation to me of what they thought they wanted. And I said, who told you to say that? And they said, oh, the other trainer that we went to. And I said, let's go back to grassroots here. I said, I'm not going to eradicate everything that they've said. And I said, because there's probably some good information in there. And I said, but none of that is. And I said, because that's trying to get you back into an off-lead strategy again. We can't do this anymore. It's off the table. You cannot do it. And I said, does it make sense? And they said, yeah. And I said, all right, so let's start again. Going forward, what's important to you? What do you want to do? And they said, we don't want to have that situation ever happen again because it felt so invasive. It felt like the sky fell on top of our head. And I said, all right, well, let's rebuild it from the ground up. And I said, because we can do that. We have the tools to make that happen, but it's entirely up to you. But there are some things that we have to do, which means going back to on leash.
Yeah. And so you've hit the point there. That's one of mine here that I have, the leashes for safety.
Yep.
And that's the biggest thing in that, like the average dog, people who are not listening to us, like the average person with their normal dog, the biggest thing they get from the leash is that they can stop the dog getting itself run over, getting itself attacked by another dog, putting itself in a position where it's going to get into trouble. The last thing I wanted to say before we run out of time is that I think that without using the leash, you're missing a like critical point of communication with the dog.
Yeah.
And I think that people have been there's cave paintings. There's literally cave paintings of leashes on dogs.
Absolutely.
Right? We've been putting leashes on canids for probably 10,000 years or more. And so they are hardwired to understand those signals quite well. And I realized again, when I was sort of really reminiscing on this or thinking this through, is that I am able to give to my own dogs and to the dogs that I train so much clarity and guidance via the leash. It's insane.
That's a really good word that you just used. And I just keep meaning to mention to people, stop thinking of this as a crutch or something that's having a negative appeal to your dog because it's basically a guide rope.
Yeah. when you use a leash properly, instead of just allowing the dog to pull in the leash and it being a point of frustration, that's what I think we see. And that's my point, is that when we see in a PSA 1, people, they do their on-leash healing and then they do their off-leash healing, and often the off-leash healing is better than the on-leash.
Yep.
And that just shouldn't be the case. Now, I admit, mine was that. That was the same with me, because I, at the time, was free shaping everything. And the leash was, to me at the time, just a point of control for the dog. And it represented frustration to my dog, because it was how I'd hold him on the back tie. Like, it was how I'd post him during the bite work and stuff like that. The leash represented to him a restriction of getting what he wants. And I think so many people are still in that model. And now, with that same dog, and certainly with all the dogs that I train and all the dogs that I have influence over the training for, is I never want them to think of the leash like that. I want them to think of the leash as like, oh, thank fuck you have that on, because that is a signal that I can get every time. It's a tactile cue. I will feel it. It doesn't matter whether I'm like highly adrenalized. It doesn't matter whether I'm focused on something. That is a tactile cue that I will be able to feel. When we talk hierarchy of signals, probably odor will go above that, but we don't control that. So of the things that we control, the down the leash pressure that goes into the collar, the directionality you can get from that, the amount of clear signals, control and guidance that you can give to a dog with the leash when it's done with that intent, I think is something that I took for granted for a long time and now appreciate more than I ever have in the past.
Good.
As well as I'm trying to pass that on to as many people as possible, because I just think that it's a missed thing.
Imagine trying to ride a horse without any reins.
Yeah, and by a particularly skilled horseman, that's possible. And with a particular kind of horse, that's possible.
I know, but then you get into like the 1%ers.
But this is why Pongo can be at the cafe, and he can be off leash, kicking it, doing his thing. And this is why, yes, I could probably achieve that with my dog if I put the work into it. I have no fucking interest in doing that. I have no desire to get to the point where my dog can walk around the area off leash, because although I could probably do that right now, I could probably take the leashes off my dog and give them the commands that I want them to do. They both have a loose leash walk command. And if I were able to take their leashes off, like I can drop those leashes. You know, if I have to pick up a shit that I am dealing with both my dogs walking around, like I can easily just drop those leashes and they stay exactly where they are. But I would rarely, it's only if I absolutely need to do that. I need those hands. I have that level of control, that level of trust, but I don't want to rely on that. I don't want that to be the hill that my dog literally dies on, because I decided that I had a level of control, but then my highly impulsive and somewhat powerful dog sees something that he wants and takes off faster than I can stop him, right? Like, and I think this is the thing, what we see is everybody assumes that us as dog trainers have this massive level of control of our dogs. And we do, for sure. But not everybody passes every trial, right? And not everybody gets full points at every trial. So it's not that the dog will always do what we say. Dogs blow off recalls. Dogs see something and just decide, nah, I'm doing it. And if it were a guarantee that my dog would call off something, it wouldn't be impressive that in the level 2 of PSA we have a call off. Like if that was something that you could guarantee, you can teach that to a dog and it will 100% work 100% of the time and you never have to worry. If your dog takes off after a cat, if you do the right training, will 100% of the time be able to call that off. That's just not fucking true. That's just not true. There's a very good chance it will if you do all the right training. There's a really good chance and you got to do everything right. But that's why we have a call off in these things, because it's like, test this, motherfucker. See how well you can train that. And even for all of us who are spending our whole lives dedicating it to training our dogs to achieve these certain tests, still fail them every now and again.
Mate, absolution just doesn't exist in dog training.
Exactly. So that's my big bugbear about leashes.
Yeah, it's good.
I think that I get it. I understand why people want to be off leash. I understand why the average pet dog owner wants to be off leash. I understand why some dog trainers don't want to use leashes, because I've absolutely been one of them. But now, the point that I'm at, I'm leash crazy. I see all of the benefits to it. I take those, I understand the cons to it, and I accept those and I work around them. And as you said, like, you got to phase that shit out. I'm like, yep, for sure you do, but not early, you know?
How many years have you known me for?
9.
How many times have you ever seen me let my dog just run into the shed without a leash on?
Never once.
Right. That has to say something, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, just because this is my backyard, we train here and stuff like that, I don't let my dogs ever run in off leash, because on the way there, I don't know, A, if there's another dog in there. I don't know who's in there. I don't know what the dog's going to do if he gets in there and there's decoys doing a drill or something like that. I just cannot fucking take the risk.
Yeah, it's unnecessary risk.
It's unnecessary, it's foolish, and it's very irresponsible on my behalf as a handler and as a trainer and mentoring people to then walk in and do something completely irresponsible like that. Like if I let my dog off lead and it ran in there and somebody got hurt, I'd never forgive myself. I'd be so disappointed and so down on myself. Like in all the years, there's always times where you have mishaps and, minor accidents. But
of course.
I've been around people before that, I've seen major accidents happen, and it's literally because they take those unnecessary risks. They let their ambitions get mixed up with their capabilities, and the next thing you know, someone pays for it.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, when you're dealing with dogs, it's the dogs that fucking pay for it.
Yeah,
you might
for sure.
you might get hit in the hip pocket, but your dog's life is on trial.
Yeah.
Because of your ego or your sense of entitlement got in the way of thinking my dog is at this expert level. He should be able to deal with all oncoming distractions and eliciting stimuli. Well, motherfuckers, that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It's good that we're having this conversation. It's good that we're discussing a rethink of returning to basics, because the evolution in most trainers should be, I'm learning. Now I'm thinking. Now I can see that my mentors have showed me a way, and yes, it's worked well for them. But then when I watch them, why are they going back to leashes? Why are they doing all these control mechanisms where they're framing their dogs in positions? The reason they're doing that is because they understand you have to have a return to the basics. Never be in a rush to eliminate the basics.
Yeah.
Like the basics are there to hold everything in place. I heard Panos say this before in one of his episodes where he says in the word basics, or it was Luke or Panos, in the word basics, the word is base, okay? Because you've got to have a base. You've got to have a base layer. You've got to have that foundation set. One of the things that I learned, it wasn't just from dog training, it was from martial arts as well. One of my old teachers, he always used to say to me, build a solid foundation, have a good base. Be strong in your mind, but also be strong in your stance and in your body as well. He never taught that you had to be rigid. He taught that you could be flexible and so forth, but he always said, have a strong foundation.
Yeah.
Any mentor that I've ever worked with everything I do, I mean, when I try and rush guitars, Jake says to me, settle down, slow down, don't be in a rush to get through this. Because I'm thinking I want to sound a certain way. When I'm a dog trainer, I'm thinking I want to look a certain way. When I'm doing martial arts, I'm thinking I want to do those high-flying kicks. It works a very small percent of the time, but then everything starts falling apart.
Yeah. So leashes, don't rush to take them off. Of course, we have to get to off-leash control. That's the point. But there's no rush to get there. And the path to off-leash control is tons of on-leash control.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. That's it.
Cool.
That's it.
We've just solved all the world's problems.
Yep. That's it for another episode. Canine Paradigm.
Cool.
As always.
Yeah.
If you like what you hear, just like, rate, share, subscribe. Tell a friend.
Someone did the other day, and I've got to read it to you.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They said,
Oh, goodness. Here we go.
it's a good one. I laughed. Glenn, spelt with one N, can die today knowing he made a difference. All kidding aside, these guys are entertaining and educational. They have nothing to do with protection sports, but still always look forward to a new episode. 5 stars.
There you go.
Yeah.
You can die today.
I can't because my name's spelt wrong.
That's a great start to a you can die today
Yeah,
knowing you made a difference.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So leave us a review somewhere.
Yeah, so we can, and spell my name properly so I can die today.
Listen, I know it's a pain in the ass. No one wants to fucking review anything. Everybody's asking you to do it, but it actually does help a lot. It tells iTunes or whoever you review us from that, oh, people do like this.
And I'm a genuine fan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you could do that for us, that would be a huge help. In return, we will have another episode next week.
Yes, that would be wonderful.
Yeah. All right. If you want to support the show, Patreon.
Yes.
This is the way to do it. That's what pays all our bills. That's what keeps the lights on in the studio here.
Yep.
That's what buys the cool microphones.
Yes.
That's what
Pays the tax bills that we have to unfortunately get at the
well,
moment.
creates the tax bills as well.
Yeah, it creates the tax bills.
But We appreciate everybody who contributes to us on Patreon. That's a massive thing for us that allows us to create the time and space and get the equipment to continue to do the podcast.
Yep.
So really appreciate everybody who does
thank
that.
you. It is genuinely appreciated. It's easy to sound like this is just hollow words and so forth, but anytime you look at it, you think, wow, that's incredible that people have taken the time to fill in this absurd form and then press their button and throw a couple of bucks our way.
And give us that money.
It's never not been appreciated.
There's
Never.
a giant backlog of information in Patreon, as well as we put new stuff in there going forward. The $1 tier is thank you and support. The $3 is a backlog of information that we've been putting in stuff in there for years and years and years, as well as new stuff going forward.
Yep.
The $10 is I do a live stream every month. And so you can ask questions in there. And then the $20 we put stuff into every now and again. And then above that is like the sponsors.
or sugar parents.
Yeah.
Like
So
if
you
want to be a
can-
mum or a dad to us.
You can, truth be told, if you want to, you can give us as much money as you like, or you can give nothing and we will still appreciate and love you going
Yep.
forward.
Or just get a fucking tapestry from Spring.
Yeah. That's the other thing. You want to support
Yeah.
the show? Don't like Patreon? Fair
No.
enough. Don't like subscription models? Fair enough.
Whatever.
Just buy a fucking tapestry.
Yeah.
I think, what do we make? $8 out of that or something?
Yeah, something like that. But you can tuck it into your T-shirt and run around like Homelander.
There you go. Okay. All right. So you've reviewed us.
Yes.
You've gotten into Patreon.
Yes.
You've bought a tapestry
Yep.
and a T-shirt.
Yep.
Last thing you got to do is get in a Facebook group.
Yep.
So the Facebook group, 10,000 people in there, just all being awesome.
Yeah, nice people.
Everybody being
Good conversations.
the number one rule
people
in
helping
there,
people.
ELE,
Everybody love everybody.
Yep. So we're doing that. But if you want to get in contact with us directly, you can shoot us an email. We are info@theK9paradigm.com. Hey, I love you guys.